At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. In the end, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it this way. My name's General G. Let's begin. The first lie of interstellar travel is comfort. The second, closely related, one standard gravity isn't a universal constant. Of course, it's a distinctly local one. And for Cadet Tesseron Vey, the lie felt like a physical assault. The transport shuttle's ramp lowered with a depressurizing hiss, spilling the voyage's thin air into Earth's atmosphere. The air smelled of wet rock and distant pine, but the weight of it struck him first. The pressure squeezed his hollow-boned chest, and each breath required a conscious, strenuous effort. He stepped onto the tarmac and his knees, evolved for his homeworld Syrah's gentle 0.6 gram, buckled. The planet's gravity latched onto him, a persistent, crushing drag, pulling at his shoulders, his spine, his slender foot arches. He felt his own mass as a betrayal. "Feels like I'm sinking," a low, resonant voice rumbled beside him. Tesseron turned his head, straining his neck muscles to see Cadet Sten. She was Hawk, a bipedal species whose homeworld made Earth's gravity feel like a gentle suggestion. She stood short and dense enough to warp floor plating, her skeleton laced with metallic fibers. A walking anchor. Her thick skin resembled stressed hide, with a faint mineral sheen over her knuckles. On her 2.5 gram homeworld, her strength was legendary. Here, she planted her powerful legs wide, relearning simple balance. "For me, it's a fact," Tesseron replied, his voice a dry rasp. A human blocked the sun, an interlocking collection of dense muscle packed onto a compact frame. A scar tightened the skin around his eye, pulling it into a permanent squint of appraisal. He wore a severe gray and black uniform, its sharp creases a stark contrast to their travel-worn ship suits. "Welcome to the Keystone Command Institute," the human growled. "I'm Gunnery Sergeant Declan Ward. You'll call me Gunnery Sergeant, Sergeant, or, if you're feeling suicidal, Sir. This landing pad is mine. Your transports are dripping lubricant on it. Collect your things and clear the tarmac. Now." The human cadets, from their own transport, moved with an unnerving purpose. They hauled gear and formed ranks in under a minute, their movements economical and sharp. They walked on this world as if it belonged to them. Tesseron supposed it did. He bent to lift his gear case. On Syrah, the action was a simple wrist flick. Here, it was a deadlift. The world tilted, the jagged mountain horizon swaying. He locked his knees, his entire frame trembling to remain upright. Sten grunted, effortlessly hoisting a case seemingly 3 times as heavy as his. She stepped, and the tarmac seemed to groan. "This lightness, it's unsettling. My muscles have no purchase." Tesseron knew what she meant, in a perverse, inverted way. His muscles fired constantly, every fiber straining in a futile war against a force they were never designed to meet. He stepped, then again. Each was a negotiation with physics. The Syran Commission had dictated his primary mission: observe, analyze, and report on human military training to build bridges of understanding for the new Union. 5 steps onto Earth's soil, and he'd already selectively revised his mission. His new goal was much simpler: survive. The barracks contained poured concrete walls, polished metal floors, and rows of bunks resembling shelves for storing bodies more than places for rest. The air tasted of antiseptic and other people's sweat, humming with the low thrum of atmospheric processors. Ward's boot falls echoed from the concrete as he walked the central aisle. "Bunk assignments are on the wall. Find your name, find your bunk. You'll have a partner. You'll live with them, train with them, and if they're slacking, you'll motivate them. If you can't motivate them, you'll carry them. If you can't carry them, you'll both fail. Understood?" A chorus of "Yes, Sergeant," boomed from the cadets. Tesseron and the other off-worlders managed a ragged collection of affirmations. His name, V, T, was next to Novikov, L. He found the corresponding bunk and saw a human female stowing her gear with a swift economy of motion. She was compact, her limbs thick with coiled muscle, her face flushed with an exuberance Tesserin found deeply alarming. She turned, saw him, and grinned, her expression broad and open. "Tesserin, right? I'm Lena Novikov. Welcome to the gauntlet." She stuck out a hand. He looked at it, then offered his own. Her powerful grip was a startling vice. His fine hand bones ground together, sending small sharps of pain up his arm. He managed to suppress a gasp and pulled his hand back as she released him. "Whoa, sorry there," she said, her grin remaining fixed and bright. "Guess I forget my settings sometimes. You're Siren, right? Low G? Oh, this must be rough." "An astute observation," Tesserin managed, flexing his throbbing fingers. Across the aisle, a lean human watched them with unnerving stillness. His gaze tracked Tesserin, then Sten as she carefully lowered herself onto a reinforced lower bunk, which creaked in protest. His face remained impassive. Ward cleared his throat, a noise like grinding stone, and the room fell silent. "Listen up. The politicians are calling this a bastion program. They have theories about interspecies trust. I have a reality, a report that says something from outside known space is coming, something that won't care about your homeworld's politics or how many gods you pray to." He looked at each of the off-world cadets in turn. "I don't care where you're from. Here you're nothing but cadets. Raw material. My job is to apply pressure. You'll either become tempered steel or you'll fracture. Either result is an answer. You'll sweat, you'll ache, and you'll be better off for it, or you'll break." He turned on his heel. "Dismissed!" The human cadets snapped to attention, their postures rigid. They seemed to vibrate with a mix of nerves and eagerness. Tesserin saw the other off-worlders frozen in place, their breathing shallow. He sank onto his bunk, the simple act of sitting down a relief so profound it bordered on ecstasy. His body already felt like a single, comprehensive bruise. Lena, however, shifted her weight from foot to foot, unable to be still. "Hear that? Tempered steel. Man, I love this. This is going to be awesome." Tesserin looked at his new partner, this creature of boundless, terrifying energy, and a cold stillness settled in his gut. He would have chosen a different world. The first morning began before the sun. A screeching alarm dragged Tesserin from a shallow, pain-filled sleep. Outside, the sky showed a deep, bruised purple, and his breath plumed in cold air. Ward stood before the assembled company in the pre-dawn dark, a steaming, breathing gargoyle. "Today we begin a light diagnostic, a simple 5-kilometer run around the base perimeter. This is to establish a baseline. Just finish." A light diagnostic, a simple run. Tesserin watched the human cadets stretch. Their movements were deep and unhurried, a routine committed to muscle. Lena jogged in place beside him. "Just a little jog. Helps you wake up." Tesserin felt slow, his own circulation a thick, unwilling current. "On my mark," Ward bellowed. "Move!" The humans moved out in a single block, their feet striking the pavement in a steady rhythm, their breathing already controlled. For Tesserin, the run was an immediate ordeal. The first step sent a resonating shock from his heel to his skull. The second was no better. His lungs, already working overtime to extract oxygen from the heavy air, felt raw as if coated in grit. He fell behind instantly. The neat formation of cadets pulled away, their footfalls fading in the distance. Lena glanced back, her cheerful expression faltering slightly. "Come on, Tesserin, just find a rhythm." He had a rhythm, the frantic, desperate beat of a creature suffocating in the open. He saw Sten a few meters ahead. Her problem was the opposite of his. Her massive strides, designed to propel her great mass against her homeworld's gravity, were inefficient here. Each step exploded with miscalibrated force, a huge energy expenditure for minimal forward progress. She showed no fatigue, only a constant fight to control her body. Tesserin's focus narrowed to survival. Left foot, right foot. Breathe in. Try not to vomit. Breathe out. The world became a smear of gray asphalt and searing chest pain. His peripheral vision darkened. He made it perhaps 1 kilometer before his legs stopped obeying. He pitched forward, the pavement rushing up to meet him. He lay there, his cheek pressed against the cold aggregate, and watched the last of the runners disappear around a bend. He'd failed the light diagnostic. He'd failed on the first day. He shut his eyes and wondered if the medical shuttle home would have Siren-calibrated gravity. Log Day 1, Tesseron Ve. Condition: compromised. Earth's gravity is a different state of being. My skeleton is at its breaking point. My heart is hammering at a rate that, back home, would signify imminent death. Standing requires nearly twice the energy my body is designed to produce. This place is hostile. The training started with a 5-kilometer run. I failed to finish. The Hawk, Sten, finished but was overheating severely. The humans treated it like a morning stroll. My first theory was that humans have some kind of biological pain inhibitor. I have a new theory. Human evolution has engendered a form of madness, a love of pain, as a survival trait. After the day's required conditioning, many human cadets, including my partner Novikov, went willingly to a place they call the gym, a room full of devices designed for the sole purpose of lifting heavy metal to tear muscle. They do it with an enthusiasm I find disturbing. They seek pain, invite it, and seem to enjoy it. The behavior is illogical, a cultural sickness. My mission is no longer to observe, it's to survive. I don't think I'll make it. The indoor training facility, which the humans called the conditioning deck, smelled of sweat and cold iron. The cavernous space was filled with racks of weights, humming treadmills, and complex machines resembling medieval torture devices. Word gathered the squad in the room's center. A collective groan went through the human contingent, less a protest and more an invocation. Lena turned to Tesserin, her eyes sparkling. "Get ready, Tesserin. It's leg day, the best day of the week." Tesserin stared at her. "The best day?" Ward stepped up to a metal bar resting on a rack, loaded with thick black iron plates. "Today, we build the foundation," Ward announced, his voice echoing in the vast room. "Everything you do in the field starts from the ground up. Your power comes from your legs. Your stability comes from your core. Today, we focus on the prime movers, squats, lunges, deadlifts. Welcome to leg day." He positioned himself under the bar, setting it across his thick shoulders. With a grunt, he lifted it from the rack, stepped back, and then squatted. He descended until his thighs were parallel with the floor, his back straight, his leg muscles standing out like wound fiber bundles under his uniform. The metal bar bent slightly under the strain. Then he drove upwards, pushing the weight back to its starting position. Tesserin could only stare. The act flagrantly violated every principle of energy conservation. A pointless, brutal, self-inflicted ordeal. He watched the human cadets line up, one by one, to perform the same ritual. Ren Ishikawa, the silent, wiry human, lifted without a wasted movement, his face impassive. Lena loaded the bar with more than twice Tesserin's own body weight and squatted it with a determined grin. Then his turn came. The other alien cadets fared poorly. A gelatinous quill lost cohesion and slumped to the floor, and Sten found balancing the unweighted exercise more challenging than lifting. Ward pointed at an empty rack. "Ve, your turn. Bar only." The bar itself felt impossibly heavy on his shoulders. The cold steel pressed into his bones. He tried to mimic the form he'd seen. He lowered himself, and his legs shook violently. A burning protest erupted from his quadriceps. He got halfway down before his stability failed, and he had to stumble forward to re-rack the bar before he collapsed. Ward just stared at him. "Again!" Tesserin tried again, and again. Each attempted layer on more failure and pain. His legs shook, his lungs burned, and a cold sweat broke out on his skin. He looked at the humans moving from one punishing exercise to the next, their faces contorted, sweat pouring from them, and in their eyes he saw a grin, unyielding purpose. This resembled less a training session and more a bizarre religious ceremony, a ritual of self-inflicted torture. Leg Day, he concluded, was its high holy day. The quarry, a vast outdoor training ground, was a mud and gravel expanse littered with towering wooden walls, cargo nets stretched between poles, and trenches filled with murky water. The place resembled a playground designed by a giant, angry child. Ward tasked the squad with running the course as a team. "Your time is the time of the last cadet to cross the finish line," he barked. "Leave someone behind, and you all fail. Ren's jaw was tight. He scanned Tesseron and Sten, his calculations plain. Tesseron, as expected, performed disastrously. He couldn't get a purchase on the climbing wall, his slender digits scrabbling uselessly against the rough-hewn planks. The rope swing over a muddy pit ended with him dropping into the muck with a pathetic splash. Lena had to haul him out, her usual cheerfulness strained. Sten, for her part, simply smashed through certain obstacles. She walked through a low wooden barricade the others vaulted, splintering the beams with her weight and strength. But she was slow and a bottleneck at any challenge requiring balance. Then they all reached the final obstacle before the halfway point, a series of wide, interlocking platforms suspended over a deep gully by a complex system of cables and counterweights. Their goal was getting the entire squad across. Ren went first, trying to dart across, but his weight on the first platform caused the third one to tilt violently, nearly throwing him off. He backtracked, scowling. Lena tried a slower approach, but the platform shifted unpredictably. Tesseron, just pulled from yet another mud puddle, stood on solid ground observing. He looked past the platforms to the system as a whole. The sway and counterbalance relationship, the subtle sag in the primary cables, the way one platform's depression caused a predictable delayed lift in another two platforms down the line. A physics problem. A pattern. "Wait!" he called out, his voice thin but clear. "It's a sequence. You have to load them in a specific order to stabilize the path." Ren shot him an irritated glare. "That's a bridge. You cross it." "No, it's a system," Tesseron insisted, seeing the flow of force through the cables. "Sten, go to the first platform. Just stand there. Your weight will anchor it. Then, Novikov, you take the third platform on the right. Ishikawa, the second on the left. The counterweights will lock you in place." They looked at him, then at each other. Ward, observing from a distance, said nothing, his arms crossed. With a shrug, Lena followed his instructions. Then Sten stepped onto the first platform, which sank a full meter with a groan of stressed metal but became rock solid, just as Tesseron had predicted. Their combined weight distribution created a stable, if slightly angled, path across the first half of the obstacle. He called out the rest of the sequence, directing his squadmates like pieces on a board. They moved, and the bridge held. They crossed. He was the last one over, his own light weight barely registering to the now stabilized system. They finished the course. Their time was abysmal, but they finished. As they stood, gasping and mud-splattered, Ren gave Tesseron a long, hard look. The open hostility in his gaze vanished, replaced by a cool, calculating assessment. From his observation post, Sergeant Ward offered a single, neutral nod. For Tesseron, that nod was a greater victory than finishing any run. In the neutral buoyancy tank, Tesseron felt competent. The colossal, spherical chamber was filled with temperature-controlled water, a silent, blue world where gravity was a forgotten rumor. Today's drill involved maneuvering through a three-dimensional maze of hoops and tunnels, simulating a starship hull breach. The humans, accustomed to a world with definitive up and down, moved clumsily. They overshot turns, their powerful limbs sending them tumbling end over end. They moved as if fighting the water, their actions jerky and inefficient. Tesseron, however, moved as if he were home. In the tank's weightless suspension, his body ceased to be a burden and became an extension of his will. A slight push with his foot sent him gliding through the water. A subtle twist of his torso changed his vector perfectly. He worked with the medium, not against it. He anticipated trajectories, used the faint current created by his own movements to guide himself around corners, and navigated the entire course. He finished in half the time of the next fastest cadet, who happened to be Ren. He surfaced to the sound of his squadmates splashing and cursing. Lena popped up beside him, sputtering. "Geez, Tess, you move like a fish, or whatever the Syrian equivalent of a fish is, a flappy sky lizard?" "We have fish," Tesseron said, a small, unpracticed smile forming. The confidence brought a physical lightness that lasted until he was out of the tank, dried off, and standing once more under Earth's full, crushing gravity. The familiar ache returned to his bones, reminding him how fundamentally inadequate he was. Ward waited for them as they exited the chamber. He looked straight at Tesserin. "You're comfortable in the float tank, Vey?" "Yes, Sergeant." "Good," Ward said flatly. "Don't get used to it. The universe won't always let you float, Cadet. Learn to stand before you learn to fly." The brief confidence Tesserin had felt evaporated under the sergeant's words. After another brutal PT session, Tesserin confronted Ward. They ran hill sprints, and Tesserin collapsed on the third repetition, his legs refusing to obey, his lungs feeling full of broken glass. Lena helped him to his feet, her encouragement sounding distant and hollow. He'd had enough. He found Ward by the barracks entrance, watching the cadets limp back inside. "Sergeant," Tesserin said, his voice unexpectedly strong. Ward turned his head slowly. "Vey?" "I need to understand the mission objective." The sergeant's scarred eyebrow twitched. "Your objective is to do what I tell you, Cadet." "Respectfully, Sergeant, I mean the strategic objective. What is the point of this endless, inefficient suffering? More direct methods exist for building muscle mass, pharmacological supplements, neuromuscular stimulation. This regimen seems designed for maximum pain and minimal gain. The logic escapes me." He expected to be punished, to be ordered to run until he passed out. Instead, Ward was silent for a long moment. He jerked his head. "Walk with me." He led Tesserin not to the quarry or the conditioning deck, but to a quiet, manicured lawn behind the main administrative building. Set into a black polished granite wall were rows of silver-etched names, the Academy's memorial. "See that name?" Ward said, tapping a plaque. "Cadet Jansen, strongest recruit I'd seen in a decade. Could squat a ground car. Died on Ganymede because he got pinned down and his nerve broke. No one ever pushed him to the point where everything hurts and he still had to think." He moved down the line. "Cadet Anari, brilliant strategist, saw patterns nobody else could, but his squad got cut off from supplies for 3 days during the Vale Nebula skirmish. He wasn't physically prepared for the hardship. He made a fatal error on hour 62 because his body was screaming louder than his mind." Ward turned to face him, the setting sun casting his scarred face in stark relief. "Strength isn't the weight you can lift, Vey. Strength is the willingness to try lifting it when you know you can't. It's choosing to step into the hurt and keep moving. We do this because it teaches you that pain is temporary, that fatigue is a feeling, not a barrier. We break you down so you can learn how to put yourself back together." He tapped the granite wall again, the sound a dull, final thud. "Pain tells you you're alive. It tells you you're changing. Pain," Ward rasped, "is progress. The armor we build before the coming war finds us." Tesserin said nothing. He looked from the endless list of names to his own trembling hands. Still frail, still weak. But for the first time, he saw them not as a liability, but as something unfinished. A new cold, sharp thought cut through his analysis. What if the humans weren't insane? What if they were just pragmatic? A pragmatic calculation in a combat scenario, not a speech or a moment of camaraderie, changed Ren Ishikawa's perspective. They were in a close-quarters combat simulation, a maze of repositioning walls and automated turrets firing harmless but startlingly loud plasma charges. Their objective was capturing a data core from the maze's center. Ren, as squad leader for the exercise, used the Academy's standard approach: suppressive fire and advance, and was failing. The turret's overlapping fields of fire had them pinned down. "Novikov, suppressing fire on Corridor 3, Ren snapped. "Sten, I need a mobile shield." "Negative," Sten's voice boomed over the comms. "Too much incoming fire. My advance is stalled." They were trapped. From his cover behind a thick bulkhead, Tesserin didn't watch the plasma bolts. He watched the turrets. Their movements weren't random. A targeting algorithm governed them. He ignored the tactical situation and focused on the data his helmet's visor fed him. The sweep patterns, the recharge cycles, the target acquisition delays. He saw it, a minute flaw in the system. "Ishikawa," Tesserin said calmly over the comm. "The patrol routes are desynchronized. Turret Alpha 7 and Alpha 9. Every 33 seconds, their sweeps create a blind spot in the northeast corner. The gap lasts 1.8 seconds. A pause. The detail was so specific, so granular, the others hadn't considered looking for it. "Say again, Vey?" Lena asked. "A 1-point-second window every 33 seconds, Tesserin repeated. "Enough time for one person to cross the intersection." Wren didn't acknowledge him. He offered no praise or requested confirmation. He just watched his chronometer. On the 30-second mark, he tensed. As the two turrets swept away from each other, he broke cover. He crossed the intersection in a low 3-step sprint and was in a new position with a clean flanking shot. 2 quick bursts of fire, and 2 of the key defensive turrets went dark. They took the objective 5 minutes later. Afterward, as they stripped off their simulation gear, Wren walked past Terson. He offered no thanks, no acknowledgement of the crucial intelligence. His habitual scowl had vanished. For the first time since they met, Wren's expression toward the Siren was unreadable. Later, in the after-action review, Ishikawa spent an unusual amount of time analyzing the biotelemetry of the non-human squad members. An alliance formed, as most military alliances do, over bad food in a noisy mess hall. Tesserin sat with Sten, the two of them, a small island of otherness in a sea of boisterous humans. He methodically massaged his aching leg muscles under the table, while Sten stared at a tray of beige single-cell protein gruel as if it had personally offended her. "My body can't process this food properly," she rumbled. "It provides energy, but no satisfaction, no substance." "My body is at war with this planet," Tesserin countered dryly. "I believe we're even." To his surprise, Leah and Wren approached their table. Wren, without a word, placed a small sealed packet next to Sten's tray. She looked at it. "What is this?" "High-density mineral supplement," Wren stated, flat as a technical manual. "Your skeleton is laced with mental fibers. Your energy conversion from standard protein rations is inefficient for this regimen, impacting squad readiness. This may help." Sten blinked her large, dark eyes slowly. Her thick fingers, surprisingly deft, picked up the packet, and she read the contents label. A low, thoughtful hum emanated from her chest. Lena followed Wren's lead, sliding into the seat next to Tesserin. She came empty-handed, offering advice instead. "Okay, so I was reading the med scans from your intake physical," she began, her voice lowered conspiratorially. "Your bone structure is amazing. Porous, but with these crazy cross-bracing structures. It just wasn't built for sustained impact loading, but we can encourage density gain." She demonstrated right there at the table. "Simple stuff. Isometric holds, controlled slow movements. It's no path to becoming a powerlifter, but it will help with the joint pain and reduce the risk of stress fractures. We can do 10 minutes after evening formation. Deal?" Tesserin looked from Lena's earnest, smiling face to Wren's impassive one. Wren saw Sten's weakness as a squad problem to solve with data. Lena saw Tesserin's pain as an engineering challenge to overcome with a better process. They saw a problem, and their immediate, instinctual response was to attack it, fix it, improve it. Sten tore open the packet and poured the gray powder into her gruel. Tesserin looked at Lena. 10 minutes, he agreed. Deal. Another leg day dawned. The name no longer sounded like a synonym for torture. Now it just sounded like a fact, like Tuesday, or rain, an unavoidable reality. Tesserin approached the squat rack. His palms were damp, but his breathing was steady. He remembered Lena's instructions on form. Chest up, weight on the heels, control the descent. He remembered Ward's words about pain as a sign of change. He settled the bar on his shoulders. The bar was loaded with a laughably small amount of weight. 2 of the smallest plates, barely wider than the bar itself. A pitiful amount compared to the humans already grunting under bending barbells. But for him, that weight was a mountain. He took a deep breath. He braced his core as Lena had showed him. He descended. His legs trembled, the vibration of muscle under strain fighting for control. He went down, slow and steady, until his thighs were parallel with the floor. He held it for a split second, a moment of screaming effort. Then he drove up. He pushed the ground away, every muscle fiber in his legs firing in a coordinated, agonizing effort. He rose, slow but smooth, and finished the repetition. He stood there, legs shaking, lungs heaving, and re-racked the weight with a loud clang. One clean squat. Pathetic, insignificant, but his. Across the room, Lena caught his eye and gave him a genuine, non-patronizing thumbs up. Ren, racking a weight that strained the deck plates, said nothing. His expression remained unreadable. Tesserin leaned against the rack, the mineral scent of his own sweat filling his senses. For the first time, pain felt less like damage and more like construction. Log, Day 41, Tesserin Vey. Condition, functioning. My body is adapting. It protests, but it adapts. My muscles are denser. I can feel new ridges of bone forming along my shins and forearms where the stress is highest. The chronic pain hasn't stopped, but I can tolerate it. I can finish the 5-kilometer run now, though I'm still the slowest. My hypothesis about human masochism was incomplete. Their behavior is less sickness and more philosophy. I've been thinking about leg day, not as a physical training, but as a psychological tool. Humans don't just endure hardship, they choose it. By creating a controlled environment of intense, predictable suffering, the conditioning deck, and systematically conquering it, they're conditioning their minds. They're teaching themselves that pain is a surmountable obstacle. The physical act of lifting the weight is secondary to the psychological victory of choosing to lift it. This mechanism builds resilience. Their madness has a purpose. They are relentless. This program is no longer about my survival. It has become an experiment. I've endured the pressure from without. Now the question has changed. How much pressure can I generate from within? What is my own limit? In the strategy classroom's cool, quiet dark, Tesserin was a predator. Here, data, not muscle, was currency, and he was wealthy. The cadets ran a complex battle simulation, a fleet engagement in a dense asteroid field with shifting sensor ghosts and ambiguous enemy movements. On their holographic tank displays, ship vectors bloomed like angry red flowers. The scenario's design intended to overwhelm. The human cadets, including Ren and Lena, immediately focused on direct action, plotting intercept courses, calculating weapon yields, maneuvering their virtual ships with aggressive intent. They became bogged down, reacting to threats instead of controlling the battle space. Tesserin leaned back in his chair, letting the tactical minutiae wash over him. He watched the data flow itself, an avalanche of telemetry and sensor readings representing the entire strategic situation. He saw the enemy's feints, the supply convoys masked as asteroid clusters, the subtle energy fluctuations betraying their hidden command ship's location. He saw the pattern. The enemy wasn't mounting a broad assault. They were executing a decapitation strike. But to do so, they had overextended their logistics, a single critical weakness. Ishikawa, Tesserin's voice cut through the classroom's quiet focus. Ignore the flank skirmishes. They're a distraction. Divert Fighter Wing Gamma to Grid 9 Gamma 5. A trio of freighters waits there, disguised as rock haulers, carrying fuel for the enemy's capital ships. Ren's eyes flickered to the grid reference on his screen. That grid shows nothing but asteroids, Vey. The sensor ghosts are too uniform, Tesserin countered, and their thermal emissions have a repeating 12-second cycle. A cloaked heat sink flush. That's them. A moment of silence. Then Ren's fingers moved quickly over his console. Executing command. The simulation jumped. The fighter wing descended on the seemingly empty coordinates. The freighters, caught by surprise, decloaked and instantly vaporized. The strategic map bloomed with alerts as enemy capital ships flagged crucial fuel shortages. Their aggressive assault collapsed into a disorganized retreat. 10 minutes later, the simulation ended. Gunnery Sergeant Ward, who observed from the back of the room, made a small, almost imperceptible nod. On the battlefield of the mind, Tesserin had just proven his own form of lethality. Your final graduation exercise, Ward announced, his voice devoid of any ceremony, is called The Forge. It begins at 0400 tomorrow. The assembled cadets went quiet. The final test. This is an 80-hour continuous field exercise. You'll cross 60 kilometers of the harshest terrain this mountain range offers. You will navigate, overcome obstacles, and complete a series of tactical objectives as a squad. You'll carry full combat gear, rations, and water. Resupply is not an option." He paused, letting the words settle. "Individual failure is squad failure. If one of you quits, fails an objective, or needs medical evacuation, the entire squad fails. No middle ground exists. You succeed together, or you fail together." The cadets fell silent, checking their gear. The clicks and snaps of buckles and magazines filled the air. For Tesserin, the announcement was a sentence of failure. 60 kilometers under full combat gear. 80 hours. He looked at the heavy pack, the kinetic rifle, the extra water bladders. The combined weight under Earth's relentless gravity felt impossible. Lena squeezed his shoulder firmly. "We got this, Tess. One step at a time. That's all." He looked at her, at Wren's focused expression, at Sten's stoic calm. He felt the familiar dread, but underneath it, something else. A core of stubborn resolve. He hadn't come this far to fail at the finish line. He hefted his pack. Its weight was brutal, but for the first time, it felt bearable. After 10 hours of marching, the initial energy vanished, replaced by a dull, grinding ache. Canteens were half empty, the mountain terrain unforgiving. Sten's slow, powerful pace, an asset on level ground, became a liability on the steep, rocky inclines. She moved with the ponderous certainty of a glacier, but the squad needed to be an avalanche. Wren's commands grew shorter. "Faster pace! Close ranks!" His tone scraped at their frayed nerves. Tesserin fought for every meter on the inclines, his lungs burning, his legs screaming with every upward step. But on flat stretches, he found a rhythm. He could now march for hours without collapsing, a feat that would have been unthinkable 3 months ago. Their first major test came at a fast-flowing river, too deep to wade. Wren and Lena, the strongest swimmers, made it across with a rope, but the current was strong. Tesserin, with his light frame, knew the river would sweep him away. "I will anchor it," Sten stated. She waded into the river, the water swirling around her dense form. She planted her feet on the riverbed and became a human anchor. The water broke against her, but she held. Using Sten as a stable mid-river anchor point, they all crossed safely. Later that night, the real challenge began. A localized magnetic anomaly scrambled their electronic compasses and GPS as they navigated a narrow canyon system, leaving them blind. Wren tried to navigate by the stars, but cloud cover rolled in, obscuring the sky. Nerves frayed, they were losing time. "Everyone, light discipline," Tesserin ordered, his voice quiet but firm. He'd switched his helmet visor to the low-light spectrum. To the humans, the canyon was featureless black. To his Siren eyes, evolved for a dimmer sun, the ambient starlight filtering through the clouds sufficed. He could see subtle differences in the rock formations, the faint lines of ancient water erosion. "I see patterns," he said, pointing. "The rock striations all run northwest to southeast in this section. The prevailing winds follow the main channel. Follow me. Stay close." He led them, his vision cutting through the darkness that blinded their technology. He became their eyes, their compass. They followed without question, a line of shadows moving silently through the night. On the third day's dawn, exhausted, dehydrated, and operating on sheer will, they reached the final objective, a fortified communications relay on a rocky bluff, which a network of automated turrets defended. The simulation data they received was clear. Projections showed a direct assault would have catastrophic losses. "We go high," Wren said, pointing to a ridge overlooking the position. "Novikov and I lay down suppressive fire. Sten, you're the breaching element. You draw their fire on the main gate." "That's a high-risk approach," Lena admitted. "The turret coverage is total." Tesserin tuned out their debate. He watched the turrets, just as he had in the simulation. Exhaustion made every muscle a dull, throbbing fire, but his thoughts were clear. The turret's sweep patterns were more complex, but they were still patterns. Still a system, and systems have exploitable flaws. He saw it, a blind spot, not a temporal one, but a physical one. A narrow, vertical crevice in the rock face on the far side of the bluff, directly beneath the primary sensor array. The turrets couldn't depress their barrels far enough to cover it. "Another way exists," he said, his voice raspy. "A blind spot, accessible only by a climb." They all looked at the crevice, a treacherous near-vertical 30-meter ascent, a climb that would have been impossible for him 3 months ago, a climb that was still probably impossible. "That's the only way," Tesserin stated. "I can make it. Get me to the control panel, and I can sever the primary power conduits." Ren and Lena exchanged a look. No time remained for argument. "I'll support your weight on the first 10 meters, Sten rumbled, positioning herself at the base of the rock face. "We'll talk you through the holds from here," Lena added, her eyes already tracing a path up the rocks. Tesserin climbed. His newly dense bones and wiry muscles protested. Every handhold was a struggle, every meter a new dimension of pain. He kept going. He remembered Ward's words. Pain is progress. He found a hold, blocking his joints in an isometric grip Lena would have approved of, waiting for the muscle tremor to subside before moving again. He remembered that first clean squat. He remembered leading his squad through the darkness. He climbed, with Sten's raw power giving him a start and Lena and Ren's voices guiding his hands and feet. He made his way up the rock face. He reached the ledge, his body screaming, his hands raw. He found the control panel, pried it open, and, with a final surge of strength, severed the power conduits with his combat knife. Below, the turrets whined and went silent. His squad secured the objective without firing a shot. Tesserin lay on the edge, gasping for air, the rising sun warming his face. He had done it. The extraction transport waited for them at the designated point as dawn broke over the mountains. The entire squad boarded, collapsing into the seats caked in mud and grime, a quiet energy passing between them. They had completed the forge. The graduation ceremony was a formality. Tesserin stood in formation, his dress uniform feeling strange and light after 3 days in full combat gear. He felt taller, somehow, more solid. When the announcer called his name, "Cadet Tesserin Vey of the Siren Union," a loud cheer erupted from the human cadets in the formation. Lena grinned, and even Ren's expression softened at the edges. He walked across the stage. Gunnery Sergeant Declan Ward stood waiting, diploma in hand. The sergeant's face was as hard as ever, but the squint around his scarred eye had vanished. He handed Tesserin the diploma, his grip firm. "You stood, cadet," Ward rasped, his voice low enough for only Tesserin to hear. "Well done." Tesserin met his handshake. The pressure was a test. This time, he met it with a strength he didn't know he possessed, a strength he had earned. Log. Final entry, Officer Tesserin Vey, Siren Commission. Date, Earth Calendar Cycle, Day 90. Status, transformed. I'm on the transport ship heading home. The ship's internal gravity is calibrated to 0.6 grams. The lightness is disorienting. I feel I could jump and float to the ceiling. My initial assessment of the human species was flawed. What I saw as madness is a logical, if brutal, response to a fundamental universal truth. It's a place of great and unrelenting pressure. The only way to withstand that pressure is to create a greater pressure within yourself. They don't fear hardship, they cultivate it. They don't run from pain, they use it as a tool to sharpen their bodies and their minds. I came to Earth to study human adaptability. I'm leaving with a profound understanding of strength. I learned the value of pain. I learned how to stand when every fiber of my being wanted to fall. Ward spoke of a coming war. The Bastion program's purpose was to forge weapons for it. I understand now I have become more than an observer. I am one of those weapons. I have survived Leg Day. He stopped the recording and held up a hand, turning it over in his cabin's low light. His bones felt dense. The skin was calloused, the grip stable, capable, strong. He closed it into a fist. That felt good. That felt like progress.